That pastors sometimes come to me and say, I'm ready to walk. I don't know how much longer I can do this. I feel burned out. I don't see the point. What is your view on it? My name is Thorsten Moritz. I'm a biblical scholar. I'm also a PhD advisor. Now, you have to know that I help pastors, among other things, with interpreting the text better. You have to understand that even if your pastor went to seminary, which hopefully he or she did, they may not have been prepared well at all when it comes to biblical interpretation. If you want the receipts from me to support the statement I just made, just let me know and I'll give you the receipts. So back to the issue. In a nutshell, instead of dissuading them, I will actually help them do it. I will help them walk. So maybe I just lost you right there. Maybe you think I should tell them to stay in all circumstances. I do not. I used to try and help pastors basically reform their churches and so on. It is almost impossible to reform a church. If you think about it, a lot of people are saying, I picked this church or that church because of the pastor. So they go there because they already think that this is what they want to hear, whatever that pastor has to say. And churches are mostly about one person doing the talking and the other person doing the listening. So typically speaking, people choose churches where their listening experience is one they enjoy. But that's not a sustainable basis either for doing church or for being a pastor in that church. Now, some of you are going to say, but wait, I go to a mega church and we have a lot of influx and new people. They're getting converted and they're being baptized. Listen, we have known for years that those new conversions in mega churches hardly ever stick. People don't hang around. They're around for a few months, maybe a couple of years, and that's about it, because eventually they realize that this is just an event they're attending, and events don't keep you going in life. For real life, you need real community. You're not going to get that in a mega church. You're going to get the opposite. You're going to get managed humanity top down, where pastors are needed to do the managing. That's what you're getting. And eventually you realize this is pointless. And you know who makes that realization next? It's the pastor. And then they may come to me and say, what do I do? And I tell them to walk rather than to stay. And here's why. Number one, there's zero basis for pastor as an office, either in Jesus or in the New Testament. It just does not exist. I know people are going to say, as they always do week after week, but dude, you got to read Ephesians 4. Listen, you're the one who needs to read Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4 is not about offices. Ephesians 4 is about gifts. It's about a plurality of people, not a single person, a plurality of people in local communities who are gifted in certain ways, and they're encouraged to use these gifts. In fact, actually, and hopefully, all people who join are gifted in ways and all have to contribute. If there are people in the community who think their main contribution is either financial or by attendance, you already have a huge problem. Number two, so if the notion of a pastor doesn't come from Jesus or the New Testament, where does it come from? I tell you, it comes from the Jewish synagogue. Now, have you ever taken the trouble of reading Mark's Gospel? You should read the whole thing. It's only 16 chapters. Reading Mark's Gospel and focusing in on passages about Jesus and the synagogue. Not once does he have a good relationship with the synagogue, because the synagogue sucks as a model for being God's people. Yet that is exactly the model that churches have chosen to follow. They have not chosen to follow Jesus. They follow the synagogal model. Read Mark's Gospel. Find me a single passage where Jesus finds anything good happening in the synagogue. The synagogue is useless. It doesn't heal people. It doesn't restore people. It doesn't teach people well. It doesn't do anything for their relationship. It basically fails across the board. And yet that is the chosen model of Christianity and Christian churches. It's really pathetic. Read it. I'm not making this up. You read it and then you come back and tell me what you think. Number three, a lot of pastors are pastors because they feel a sense of calling. That is one of the most misused biblical concepts in modern times. It's amazing how people feel called the moment they want something. God called me to do this. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. There is no calling into an office of leadership because there's no office of leadership. So when people are in this position where one day they're burned out and they want to go back to their sense of calling, they're in double trouble. Am I supposed to tell them that their sense of calling is going to pull them through? Well, I won't, because it won't. It will not pull them anywhere except into deeper trouble. I've done many videos in this account that show that the New Testament and or Jesus are not interested in a sense of community that is really a managed humanity based on an attendance model, especially not one which is led by one person. Now, you may disagree with me, but if you do, please do me a favor and give me a single passage from the New Testament that shows that Jesus had any interest whatsoever in this notion of a single leader of a church. If you want to know what Jesus actually said, here we go. Matthew 23, and imagine being a pastor having to preach this. Matthew 23, verse 8. You are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers and sisters. Think about this for a minute. The people and the office that claims to be the teacher in the church doesn't have a place to go, doesn't have a position, doesn't have a standing, because there's one teacher and it is Jesus. But that teacher is evidently being ignored when it comes to doing church. I can't begin to tell you how sick I am of seeing churches think or pretend that what they're doing is somehow a biblical thing. It is in no shape or form. Number 4, churches simply do not change. If a pastor hopes that their church changes and that therefore their work will be a little less of the burned out nature, it's not going to happen. Recently, I went to a megachurch not far from my house, a few miles away. It's called Eagle Brook Church in Minnesota. It's those wannabe Willow Creek type churches. Last time we went there was probably about 10 years ago or longer. I tell you what, not a thing has changed. Maybe the music's louder or something, but it's the same old stuff, the same old attendance model. I yawned my way through that 1 hour, and the saving grace was it was exactly 1 hour long, the service. At that point, they were done. Thank God for that. I once told this the leadership of Willow Creek itself, and I should tell it the leadership of Eagle Brook in Minnesota. Whatever they are doing, this is not church. There's no basis for calling this church. In a nutshell, the teaching slaughtered the hell out of the Bible, and it didn't lead to transformation anyway. At least when I talk to people, they're saying, well, it makes me feel this or it makes me feel that. But it doesn't actually affect their lives, because on Monday morning they go to work, and that's when real life starts for the next 6 days. And then they go back and take a shot in the arm at this thing that calls itself church. It's a travesty and a tragedy. And I'm not going to tell a pastor who thinks he's going to walk that he should stay there and change the church. That change will never happen, and the burnout will never get better. Now, some of you are going to tell me, how could churches have been so wrong for so many years, for centuries, and you come along and you say it's all wrong? Well, remember something. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different church models, and they already conflict with each other in a multitude of ways. So we already know that the majority of Christians have gotten it wrong. You don't need me to realize that. So my question to you is, if you have substantive reactions to what I said here, the emphasis being on substantive, by all means, let me know, put it in the comments. Now, before I respond to that, just to clarify something, this is not about finding the correct model. This is not about finding a biblical model. This is about doing church in a way that has any kind of credible continuity with Jesus of Nazareth, because if we don't go there, then what's the point anyway? Frankly, in my experience, churches only change when they either run out of money and they're being swallowed up by a big one, or they're already a big one and they build another pointless building and they need money for that. And people say, our church is doing so well. We had baptisms, we have a new building. Well, great, so what? So listen, if you're a pastor who's experiencing burnout and you're thinking of walking, my advice is run.